Content and Organization of a Manuscript, Part 2. The learning outcomes associated with this section. We will again review the major parts of a research paper for APA format. We will use the APA format throughout for consistency. We'll understand how to prepare a literature review or background or theoretical background or overview that integrates and synthesizes across scholarly and non-scholarly sources. We'll apply APA formatting to our references on the references page and inline text citations. We'll also be able to evaluate our own literature review and formulate a conclusion from that. As a reminder, the general guidelines for article sections include the introduction, a lit review or theoretical background, a method section, the results that we found, and discussion or conclusion based on what we learned. I encourage you to download the sample APA format to the right and take a look at it as you are working to prepare your article. Your paper, again as a reminder, will only include the introduction, the lit review or theoretical background, a discussion or conclusion section, along with a title page, an abstract, and references. While method and results are reported in most academic writings, we don't have time to do that in one semester, so you will not be required to complete those sections. Let's take a closer look at the theoretical background or the lit review. This looks at what's been done in the past, both by academic and non-academic research, like current research or industry research or white papers, by building on the others that are respected, both in industry and as researchers in academia. Your paper is stronger. You're building upon the shoulders of giants. The lit review does give a detailed analysis of previous studies as they are related to your topic. Probably the hardest part of the lit review is integrating and synthesizing across multiple articles, multiple authors, and multiple ideas. You have to bring it all together and see what it means for your topic. It's not that hard to gather the research, even not that hard to do an annotated bibliography for each source. But bringing them together so you see themes that emerge across multiple researchers and you discover new ways of looking at something, that's the hard part. That's what makes you an academic writer. It is absolutely not an annotated bibliography. An annotated bibliography would have Article 1 and you summarize it. Article 2 and you summarize it. I don't want to read your paper where each paragraph has one source at the end, one citation. You must cite each assertion, and you don't want to cite the same researcher or the same paper for an entire page or paragraph. Integrate and synthesize. Did multiple people say that security issues were a problem with big data? Say that. Say researchers have found many security issues related to big data, and cite those who've done it. By integrating and synthesizing, you're bringing a new way of looking at your topic. You may want to take a look at the YouTube videos here that describe the literature review, Part 1 and 2. Writing the literature review is the second part, and literature review Part 1 is the first part. The second one is specifically for graduate students, and I think it might help you as you go through. At this point, I encourage you to pause the video and watch these two lit review discussions. Let's take a look at how you put together your lit review. And this outline for comprehensive science lit reviews to the right gives you kind of an overview with some specifics. First thing you have to do is choose your topic. Your topic is likely going to be refined over time. I've even had students completely change from one topic to another, even after doing the annotated bibliography. That's fine with me. You don't even have to get approval from me to do that. If you can keep your topics related to each other, it makes your research a little easier during the semester, but it's not required. I understand you're going to be refining and changing your topic over time. That's fine. That's part of the research process. You have to go out and start researching, searching, reading about a topic. As you're considering a topic, Google isn't a bad place to start, or even Wikipedia. You would never use Wikipedia as a primary source, but it's good for reading and kind of trying to learn about a topic you're interested in. Once you do define and refine your topic, which will likely take a good bit of reading of academic research papers, then you're going to start doing your literature review in earnest. And you're going to probably create an annotated bibliography. You're going to have to for this class, which will help you as you prepare for writing your final research paper. You're likely going to refer to many of the library resources. There's actually a graduate guide for the MSIS program that you can look at. You may look at current research in industry. You may look at CIO.com. You may read white papers from Microsoft. All of those are valid, but you must have a sufficient number of scholarly resources which are peer-reviewed. Once you gather your info, you have to make some sense out of it. You have to understand which articles are maybe more respected, which articles have more views, more downloads, which articles are more relevant to your study. You need to critically review all articles. Because it's published does not make it good. Even peer-reviewed articles, they're not all good. Read them with a critical eye. You have the skill set, evaluate, critically review, and see what you may have done different. At that point, you'll be creating the annotated bibliography, which you've been working on. And then you come to the difficult part. Synthesize and integrate. You look at themes that you want to talk about. If you want to talk about wearable devices and you want to talk about them from the patient perspective of how likely they are to wear them, what might be measured for them, what's the cost, then you might want to look at the doctor perspective in terms of monitoring this data, providing real-time feedback, and any insurance concerns if they don't respond. And you may want to look at the hospital perspective, where they're looking at trying to reduce readmissions, which account for a large percentage of hospital admissions because people don't follow instructions. So if they allow these, or if they use these wearable devices, will they be able to improve outcomes, save money, benefit the community? The method section, which is not required for your research paper, is an integral part of most academic papers. So you're going to come across it, and it's important to understand what's happening in the method section. Usually, it describes in detail how the study was completed, includes things like subsections that may describe the participants or subjects. 116 participants responded using SurveyMonkey. These participants were selected at random from a list from the university or from the hospital, whatever it might be. You would then or the author would then list and describe any instruments used, any surveys, any online feedback forms. Maybe they watch a video and provide open-ended feedback. Maybe you interview them. Maybe you observe them. All of this must be described. And you also explain how you did gather the data. Did multiple people do it? Did you go and gather all of it? Did you use technology so you could talk with people no matter where they are? All of that has to be explained, and the author should do it. If they don't, you can critically evaluate and say, I don't even know how many people responded or exactly what survey you used. And perhaps they did not need to report it for that journal, or maybe they overlooked it, or maybe it's not a great paper. But again, the methods section, not required for your paper, but typically a part of most academic papers you will read. The results, also not required for your paper. Simply time won't allow you to do a good job or an adequate job of developing a method, getting it approved, gathering the data, and then analyzing and making sense out of it. That takes more than one semester. But you'll read about the results. You'll read things like this table you see to the right, where data is summarized in a manner that's appropriate for the article. Usually you have statistical analyses that look at different variables of concern. Tables and figures may be used as appropriate. Probably most academic papers end up with many tables and figures. And statistical significance is also often discussed, with a significance below 0.05 being considered significant for most academic research. What that means basically is that you are correct 95% of the time. So your 0.05 or less is how uncertain you are about your data. After that comes a discussion and or a conclusion section. You may also see a limitation section. It really depends on the author's style and the journal that you're reading or the conference that you're attending. Obviously, you want a conclusion that summarizes your paper. You want to end on a high note. So you summarize what you found in your study. In this case, you're going to summarize the literature you gathered and kind of develop the themes that you found. If you can make recommendations for future research, or if you see an area where there's maybe not as much research, or they need to go into a slightly different area, looking at security from a technical perspective rather than a user perspective, for instance, you can look and see if you can make recommendations. Most academic papers do have future research that may be included in the conclusion section. The references are a separate section. They're an integral part of your paper. They must be in proper APA format. I will check italicize and commas and page numbers and everything, and I may check some of the references, particularly if I'm interested in learning more about them. If you cite something in your paper, it better show up in the references list. So you need to double check that. If you have a reference listed in the reference section, it must be cited within the document. This is not a bibliography. I don't want to know everything you read. I only want to know the ones that you used. You want to integrate your references throughout. You want to make sure you document and cite all assertions, all statements you make. And you want to try to bring together previous projects into a meaningful manner, organizing by themes or common things that you see across multiple papers. Again, this is not a bibliography. I do not want to know everything you read. The annotated bibliography is closer to that. You're telling me what you've read thus far and what you found in those papers. This is not a bibliography. To summarize, at the right you see a very basic outline of a paper with intro, body, and conclusion. And in this one we looked at the body, or the literature review, theoretical background section of the paper. We also looked at method, results, and conclusions. So we looked at number 2 and 3 in this generic outline. We know the major parts of a research paper are the abstract, the intro, the background or theoretical review or literature review, the methods, the results, the discussion, and or a conclusion. Abstract and intro were discussed in the previous presentation, and here we looked at the rest of the paper. You must use APA format throughout for consistency. That's true of all portions of the research paper. The literature review is going to be the largest part of your paper. The abstract will be a half page to a page. The introduction will start on the next page and will be 1 to 2 pages. The discussion will be about a page. The references will be a page or 2. The literature review is going to be 5 to 10 pages. It is the meat of your paper. The hardest part of the literature review is integrating and synthesizing across multiple sources, scholarly and non-scholarly, and coming up with some conclusions based on your readings. You must use references to support all of your assertions. That lets you build upon the shoulders of giants and not recreate the wheel. Finally, a good rule of thumb is to include on average about 1 reference for every page of your paper. So if your paper is 10 pages, I would expect about 10 references total. I would not expect 1 reference on every page. That wouldn't integrate and synthesize. I would expect each reference to likely be cited a couple of times throughout the document. But about 10, and that's just an average. You may have more. If it's a new emerging topic, it's possible you'll have less. But I'm looking for about that. So this lesson looked at the number 2 and 3 part of this outline, the body and the conclusion, and should help you as you prepare your research paper for this class.